So, what should be the cost cap? What should be the penalty for breaching the F1 cost cap? And there has been a lot of news around this, with Zach Brown's memo and letters getting leaked. And Ben Anderson from the race threw a very interesting, article out there saying that even if Red Bull did not breach the cost cap, they would have still been ahead of Ferrari and Mercedes. But here's my here's my question to you. When it was announced that Red Bull breached the cost cap, and somehow it started that Red Bull, like the news started. I don't know if it's just a meme that Red Bull breached the cost cap because of catering and some other things that weren't
Yeah.
related to technical development. And I'm like, and my thought was like, how can you pinpoint that when everything adds up? Like, did they spend the
Yeah.
reason, let's say, it was catering, the reason they breached the cost cap by whatever, like almost 5 million or whatever, because of catering, is it because they spent that much extra money on catering compared to the other teams? Or, it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
So I was really lost when people were making fun. I'm like, I get it, people want to meme this, but it makes absolutely zero sense in my brain.
Yeah, I think like when you take it as a whole, you can put any component of it outside the cost cap, and the easiest one to put outside the cost cap without raising any further questions is catering, right? So, and it's a cumulative of everything else. It's a accumulation of catering, salaries, development, and everything in between, right? And you just put catering in the end of the line that okay, this was the extra part and not our development. So yeah, g- good.
Let's come back to the actual question. What should be the penalty for breaching the cost cap? And what do you think? Do you agree with Zach Brown and his, suggestions? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's again, we do not have a lot of details on it yet because they just announced that because they just announced that Red Bull and two other teams have Williams and Aston Martin have breached in different capacities. Williams obviously
It's a procedural breach for
Aston Martin.
Williams and Aston Martin, whereas it's a
Yeah,
financial breach.
Williams was already fined for something, so they were already clear in that regard. Aston Martin was again some procedural breach, and Red Bull had the major issue. No, my concern with it is FIA and like the rules did say FIA and like the rules did say that there's a 5% sort of leeway window or something like that, right? So once you do that, it I think it's the 5% creates a 7.5 million or some teams a chance to spend that 7.5 million extra and then debate you when they get caught, right? And which is exactly what's happening. Had FIA been very clear that there is no window, there is no buffer zone or whatever, and this is a solid cap, and anything more than that, anything even a single dollar more than that would cost you such and such penalties. So that would have been much more clearer, and that would have been much more uh, you know less debatable. And secondly, in the list of penalties, and everyone's pointing out that the list of penalties states that the loss of championship points or the disqualification for championship, whatever. The problem is that the list of penalties states it could be like the language is I'm paraphrasing, but it's somewhat like of the following, and then the following are loss of driver championship points, loss of team championship points, and so on and so forth. So again, you can say that they have breached it, and you can say that these are the penalties. But when you give such a big gray area to everything,
See,
there's not
See,
exactly.
here's the thing. I understand the point where you're saying, there should be a hard line between what is a cost cap breach and what is not a breach. And I agree with that. And I think even Zach Brown count as a minor breach. And after that, I think he proposed a 2.5%. Up to 2.5% would be a minor breach, and after 2.5% it would be a major breach, right? And I'm of the opinion of the same opinion as you, where even if it's a little bit more, even if it's a dollar more, if it's a cent more, it is a breach.
Yep.
Cent more, it is a breach.
Yep.
And any gray area, you're talking about millions here, and how that is used, you don't really know. You can't really go back into I mean, sure, you can go back into the books, but no one has that time. FIA has barely been able to speak out on time about what they've done up till now. But what I don't agree with is the vagueness of the penalties that FIA has outlined, and I'll give you a counter view, right? And here's my perspective on it. Even if the FIA draw a hard line and also hard penalties, they outline all the penalties that you can have, unless those penalties cover everything, the teams will find a way to game the penalties the same way the teams game the engine penalties. Which is why the vagueness of the penalties provides FIA an opportunity to come down on Red Bull, and any other team before they can develop, if they want to do that, a cohesive penalty system, a comprehensive penalty system. Which is why the fact that it's vague almost works in favor of the FIA, as long as
Yeah, I guess you're right, because Formula One teams are known to use that gray area
yeah.
and exploit that gray area. So yeah, that's absolutely
I
right.
totally get why Red Bull, even if yes, whatever interpretation or whatnot, we've known about this from a technical point of view. We've known about this from a technical point of view. We've never had to talk about it from a financial and sporting point of view. And Red Bull pushing the boundaries in the very first year is absolutely the best we could have asked for. Now, obviously, we don't want, like a lot of people have pointed out, we don't want championship based on the financial regulations about 8 to 9 months after the championship. And I'm totally, I absolutely resonate with that. But I don't think it needs to be such a complex procedure, Give the team a credit card and tell them to use it every day as much as they want until they hit the limit. And once they hit the limit, the credit card every day as much as they want until they hit the limit. And once they hit the limit, the credit card is not usable, and that's it. That is the end of the season.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, perhaps if last season's championship battle had not been so intense and so down to the wire, it like right now, right?
Yeah, and
because yeah.
And here's the thing: it's not just about last year's championship, right? It's also about them spending on the new regulations. And I think Zach Brown is also right in pointing out that, okay, we did have a dress rehearsal on the cost cap in 2020, right? So it's not like you were doing it for the first time and you misinterpreted it. It never happens. If there's a misinterpretation, it's not a misinterpretation, it's like interpreted differently, and it's still approved by everyone, that is in that process. So, yeah, I mean, it is definitely a gray area. Let me ask you this: Would you like Max Verstappen to be stripped of his world title because it was very close, and it could have been the deciding factor, arguably, between Red Bull winning and not winning last year? And we're not even talking about this year; we're just talking about last year.
Yeah.
Because this year they have been talking about last year.
Yeah.
Because this year they have been pretty clear.
Yeah, I mean personally, and I mean not personally, but in the sensible point of view sort of thing, I don't think Max should be stripped of that title. Because it's like almost 10 months after that championship fight ended, and that time it was fair and square. Again, it's just
it just doesn't seem right. It just
yeah,
doesn't
exactly.
seem right. Like you awarded this guy the championship, and especially when it comes to like a driver and the driver is working for the team.
Exactly.
The driver is not the team. It's usually working for the team.
Exactly.
Which is why we have the separate championships, and it almost works like that. And fortunately for Red Bull, it just worked out in a way that Max won the Drivers' Championship and Red Bull lost the Constructors' Championship, so it doesn't really matter that Max won the Drivers' Championship and Red Bull lost the Constructors' Championship, so it doesn't really matter them getting penalized on
Yeah.
points on the constructors for last year or this year because they have such a huge margin. But I think what Zach Brown outlined, or what has been reported that Zach Brown has outlined in his letter, is pretty fair. It's not just a financial penalty that he's calling for. Obviously reduction in testing time, wind tunnel aero, all of that, and that makes sense in my opinion because uh, unless Red Bull can walk FIA through and show them exactly where that extra money was spent, it will be really difficult to outline what is a fair penalty. And in that case, a fair penalty is whatever penalty. And in that case, a fair penalty is whatever stops them from having an unfair advantage going forwards and not, while looking at the past.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a comprehensive penalty is very important, and it. The penalty should actually penalize the team, and it should not be a slap on the wrist or something like that. And I mean, as you said, the driver and the team are separate entities. We remember in 2008 and 2007, the crash gate, no, the spy gate for the drivers, Lewis Hamilton and Fernando Alonso both finished equal on points in P2 and P3, and McLaren were stripped of all the championship points and disqualified from the championship. So I think that is something in that area can be worked upon. Of course, what Zach Brown said that something in that area can be worked upon. Of course, what Zach Brown said that testing time and everything, because testing time is now a component of the regulation.
Yeah.
It can be worked upon. So yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I'm definitely excited to see I tackle this. I never thought I'll be excited about finances in my life.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was
told
thinking
my
the
dad
whole
I'm
time.
never going to do what you do, and that's why I became an engineer. But here I am, excited about finances now, and
Yeah.
how they are going to handle it. But yeah, I was going to handle it. But yeah, I was gonna say something else, but I'm forgetting right now. Oh yeah, I was gonna say on the same lines, right? On the sporting lines, it's almost like I don't think I'm gonna say this. I think I'm gonna keep it for another podcast. It's a very controversial opinion, so I'm gonna keep it to myself for now. But let's move on. Okay, that's enough. That's enough about the cost cap. Let's talk about the other, not so hot topic. People are pretty tired of talking about this. But let's just cover it really briefly here in our podcast today, and that is how will this, or yes, let's say this, how will this silly season finally end, and when? Nick De Vries is moving to Alpine. Wow.
No, Nick De Vries is moving to AlphaTauri.
Yeah, sorry. Nick De Vries is moving to AlphaTauri and Gasly is moving to Alpine.
Yeah, Alpine.
Clearly, I've been checked out with F1 ever since I thought Max won the championship. But
Yeah.
and there's since I thought Max won the championship. But
Yeah.
and there's big doubts over Mick Schumacher's future, especially. We know Latifi won't be staying with Williams moving forward, and I think there was an article earlier this week where Gunther Steiner basically gave Mick Schumacher an ultimatum: is that, hey, you have lost us a lot of money, and if you don't get the points, you're not going to get a contract. Where do you see this going? And somehow Nico Hülkenberg is still in the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, that was very surprising when, Nick Hülkenberg's name came up in a lot of articles and a lot of videos and everywhere. But then again, if videos and everywhere. But then again, it's justified that a driver of his caliber who has stayed in touch with Formula One is in conversation, but just I don't think any team would have him as their first priority. And with Haas not agreeing, like with Haas not Haas and Mick essentially parting ways, it looks like it. So apparently Nico Hülkenberg is the best Haas have got. So
What options do you think these two teams have, and who would you like to see on the grid? Let's put it that way.
I see. I mean, Nico Hülkenberg. See, first of all, obviously Mick Schumacher is already there. Nico Hülkenberg has made some cameo appearances in the last few years. and performed well in those cameo appearances, basically. And given the opportunity to prepare properly for a whole season, and give him a few months, like starting now, to prepare for March and then the entire season. So that could be a good option. And who else do we have? Option. And who else do we have? Uh, we have
I,
Theo Pocher.
I was gonna come to
In
exactly that. I was like, it
Yeah,
is surprising that we haven't heard anything from Sauber trying to place Theo Pocher
yeah,
in a
absolutely. I
seat.
think I think Theo Pocher and Rogovic should be on in the conversations, because for a team for so Haas won't take Felipe Rogovic because Haas want a experienced driver. I think Günther Steiner has made that clear, basically. But for someone like Williams, if they want, they can coach or Theo Pocher to, they'll get some sponsorship money from Aston Martin or Sauber, and they get a proper, tested driver who is a proper, who is a driver. So they get a driver, but I don't know about what Haas is going to do.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Felipe Dragovic, like you said, and Theo Pocher are not in the conversation, especially from Aston Martin and Sauber's side. Um,
Yeah,
I can imagine why Williams or, like you said, Haas might not want it because Haas wants an experienced driver. Yeah, absolutely. Like there are these two, even Jack Doohan, you can argue, on the sidelines, waiting for a chance to get into F1. Um, as far as experienced drivers are concerned, is Nico Hulkenberg the only option? Obviously he's one of the latest options. It seems Daniel Ricciardo does option. Obviously he's one of the latest options. It seems Daniel Ricciardo does not want to participate. Sebastian Vettel would not take one of these seats either. So and it's almost as if Nico Hulkenberg fits the bill. If you look at the Haas lineup from years previous, right? Kevin Magnussen and Roman Grosjean. Magnussen and Roman Grosjean.
yeah,
After the first couple of years, you would never bet on one of these guys to win a championship. Y-
yeah,
They're
absolutely,
just people who you imagine would finish in the points every now and then, and that is about it. So Nico Hulkenberg almost fits the bill perfectly for Haas. He doesn't.
exactly.
Uh,
Yeah, but I mean, my biggest concern is for so Nico Hulkenberg always kept Formula One as an option open or return open, but he never really went anywhere else in racing. He didn't try anything else. So I don't know how, because he came in for substitute roles, which he was contracted to. That is fair enough, but a proper season will take a lot out of him. He has a young family now, and all those aspects. So I don't know how that aspects. So I don't know how that part of it will end up being. But I think Nico Hulkenberg, if you are looking for other alternatives, the next best thing is Daniel Kvyat, which I don't think Haas will. Haas won't approach Daniel Kvyat, and there is no other driver who is, who
willing.
might,
Yeah.
who might come back to Formula One in that capacity.
Yeah, I mean it's I mean I remember 6 months ago we were talking about how much talent there is in the ladder in the ladder waiting on the sideline, and
Yeah.
somehow we have found ourselves in a place where teams are struggling to find drivers. Uh, I'm also surprised that there haven't been any rumors about McLaren trying to place one of their IndyCar drivers or other left field drivers into one of the teams. I think that would have
Yeah,
been advertising, but it would still have been a little bit exciting on the way, on the lead up to the season.
yeah, but I think with the uh, super license points issue with Colton Herta and everything in that spectrum, IndyCar drivers moving towards Formula One spectrum is off the chart, off the boards right now, because again the super license points and everything just messes it up.
Yeah. Well, this was a very fruitful conversation. Clearly, we did not come to a conclusion at all. Great, just the point of this
I mean,
podcast, bringing
that
you.
is exactly what the Formula One teams are going through right now, because there are the two least attractive seats in Formula One right now.
No one wants
Basically,
it.
no one wants it, and the teams can't find. No one wants it, and the teams can't find drivers for them. So, I'm pretty sure uh, we won't see any announcements till the end of the season. The announcements will come after the season, from what I can understand.
Yeah, I mean, Mick slots in at Williams and Nico Hülkenberg slots in at
Yeah.
Haas. That's like the easiest thing to say. But anyway, talking about McLaren drivers from IndyCar, McLaren did announce that not Pato Ward, Alex Pillow will be doing the FP1 session in Kota, and then Pato Ward in. I think putting Colton Herta in for the US GP FP1 would have been explosive. It would have been very interesting to see how he stacks up, because he has been the golden child of the um, American racing scene, um, American racing scene, and how he stacks up in an FP1 session against his teammate, let's say. So kind of disappointed with McLaren for not doing that. I was really hoping for that to happen. But also another thing. I think there was a recent article on the the owner of USGP or Kota basically said that he would like to see um, F1, MotoGP, or F1 IndyCar, NASCAR crossover weekend where there's all these racing series together. I mean, obviously the answer was yeah, it's not gonna happen anytime soon. I mean, obviously the answer was yeah, it's not gonna happen anytime soon. There's too many egos
Yeah.
involved. But I mean, as a fan, I don't think I would be able to pay for it. I'm barely
Yeah,
able to pay for
absolutely.
just F1 with no support series going to Kota right now, and having to pay for NASCAR and IndyCar for this weekend would really break the bank. I mean, it would be really economical in terms of watching all the racing for the year in one place in one
Yeah.
weekend, but in that way, but for one paycheck, it'd be too bad. And I don't think it really makes financial sense for the other series or the track itself, really, unless a couple of these series are coming back again. IndyCar last race there in 2019, but let's say if all of these series race once a year at Kota, they're essentially racing on the same weekend. The track is basically empty the rest of the year.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I'm not
It
sure.
doesn't make sense, and I think we talked about the logistics part of it when we talked about Formula One and Formula E
Yeah.
racing at Monaco at the same time, right? So it won't make sense logistically, financially, or anything. And I'm pretty sure when like all the if the weekend is so if the weekend is so stacked by so many high priority events, the track operations would be hampered, because if you look at Formula 1 weekend or IndyCar weekend, there is one spotlight event, that is Formula 1 and IndyCar. The junior events take a lesser stage. So even if there is some issue with, let's say, the Formula 2 race, which is supposed to happen before Formula 1, and if it gets delayed, the Formula 1 race will happen and the Formula 2 race will get delayed further,
Yeah, that is
happening at the same
exactly
time.
what
It
they
doesn't
said.
make sense.
Yeah.